All right. So we can start with what millenarian future does Himmler envision for Germany and its new eastern territories, aka like Poland, USSR once the war is over. Um, I can start. So I think that he wanted to like create like the strongest Aryan people and use that to fight the rest of Asia. Like he wanted to take over Europe first and then take over Asia, by like making the best people by populating like almost like population control, like which has to do with eugenics, which we've touched based upon so many times now. Um, and like they wanted to take millions and millions of Aryans and use that to take to war against Asia, and after that have like global domination as long as they had perfect genetics for it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like the main emphasis, like the main point of everything that he's saying comes back to the idea that it's absolute rule for the SS. So it's like he reiterates that multiple times, like absolute rule, absolute power, and domination,
Yeah,
which obviously, relates to the fact that he wants it to be he wants it to be one race of people and he wants them to be the most powerful people that they can be. And he said, our concern, our duty is our people and our blood. And he basically says that our concern isn't with other people or anybody else except for our own race and our own people. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, you stole exactly what I was going to say with that
Sorry.
point. But yeah, so another way of saying of like what he thought of was like after the war, that there's no rest. They're gonna start working right away.
Mhm.
He said no rest after the war, have to be awake to tackle reconstruction on Germany.
yeah,
So
Mhm.
work for the first 6 months post-war, and then they want to colonize post-war, indoctrinate boys with laws of the SS organization, and they also want to have the ancestry be a part of their human being. That way, that they know like where they came from and how they did it. And then he also does want to take control over the East, and which also means like in 20 years push that national boundary, like you were saying, Andrea. And he was just
hmm
saying push little by little into the eastern territories, and they never want to grow soft. And then they also want to create a healthy elite to combat against Asia whenever that
yeah.
happens.
Yeah, because they didn't like really talk about Asia, but they knew that it was coming at one point, like or they thought it was coming in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah, he
Which
always, it was always on the
I
back of his mind.
yeah, which I think is kind of interesting because McKenna, you brought up where he was talking about race, and the next question is like, are the films themselves more similar or different? And they're different in the sense of obviously they're different films, but I think they both wanted to create a race that was perfect and like honorable and closer to God and like eugenics. All I kept thinking about was like eugenics, eugenics, eugenics. And
Mhm.
we did our own module on that too. Um, but I think they're more similar than different in the sense of their bias. They're very biased in what they want out of their lives, including their genetics too.
Mhm. I mean, if you're even looking at the similarities between the speech and
Yeah,
the films, for example, like you can hear the propaganda and everything, like it runs all throughout, obviously, which is the purpose and them being created, all these texts being created. But at the same time, it's like, regardless of how different they are with the topics, like obviously one is about Japan and one is about the Eternal Jew is obviously about Hitler and Nazi Germany and everything. But with the text, it's like you can just hear the similarities running throughout. Like at one point in the speech, I believe he was saying like we will only be he said, we shall never be rough and heartless when it is not necessary. That is clear. We Germans, who are the only people in the world who have a decent attitude toward animals, like those kinds of
yeah.
things, will also assume a decent attitude towards these human animals. And it's like the way that they're describing other human beings, it's like they're treating them like they're not even humans, like they're just animals, like they're not even other functioning humans, which is definitely what you run into with the films. Or it's almost like with the Eternal Jew, it's almost like describing Jewish people as parasites, like as
Yeah.
Yeah.
like parasitic things and not even humans, like dehumanizing them.
Yeah, like rodents in your house that you have to get rid
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I'm
Uh-huh.
pretty sure in the film they even classified Jews as being parasites. And with what you were
Yeah.
Mhm.
saying from the speech, saying that they you said something about them torturing animals. Is that what you said? Or
Yeah,
killing
yeah,
animals?
it said like we have a decent attitude towards animals, but then it said we'll also assume a decent attitude towards these human animals.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in the film of the Eternal Jew, they also say that Jews torture and kill animals. So they're like
Hmm.
making them look out to be the bad guy. And one thing that I saw a similarity in both films was that they sort of like show how they like live their life in a way. Like they say that
Hmm.
Jews, they don't classify the Jews as like that's their religion. They don't believe that it's a religion, but they say that they learn from the books of law, so like the Torah, and it teaches them many truths, but then they twist it and turn it into the Jews are bad people, and they say that they torture and kill animals. And then with the Japanese, they said that they're from different places. They formed up different places, and their blood is made up of with mixed with gods. And then they also said that the Japanese actions must imitate the way of their gods. So that's what I thought of, like a similarity with them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But definitely in the Eternal Jew film, I definitely thought they made everything to like look bad, like make the
Yeah,
Jews look bad,
it's
and they
Hmm.
definitely exaggerated it to so that like the people would be on, their side instead of the Jew side. Just make them
I
Yeah.
look
I
like that they're the
also
enemy.
I also thought like with the torturing animals and like all that stuff, like I think that's just a watered way of saying like they kill animals to eat it, but we all do it. Like I don't know. It makes me think because I'm Puerto Rican, so like we always have a pig for Christmas. Like it's always a big thing, but like we buy it, we raise it, and then we eat it. And it's not like anyone ever looks upon us, or maybe they did. I'm not sure of the history, but like, oh my God, they buy pigs and then kill it and then eat it, and like this big thing. It's not really even like that, which is why what you were saying kind of is propaganda. It's dark.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to C. So, would you classify either film as secular millenarian? Someone else can take it away if you want.
I feel like I would classify definitely the Eternal Jew as secular millenarian. Like, I feel like, I mean, even if you just go back to like the definition that he gave us, he brings up for Hitler and the Nazis, the good were the Aryan and the bad were the Jews and other subhuman races. And the millennium was like the Third Year Reich. And like, I don't know, like obviously he brings up that point, but at the same time, like you can just tell that based off of the film, like it goes in discussing like the ways that they want the future of basically the world. Like obviously they're talking about Europe at this point, but they want to expand and they want the future of the world to be Aryan. Like they want the future of the world to be German. They want the future of the world to be one race and one people, one powerful people. And although like obviously it has to do with religion in terms of like the Jews, like it isn't a religious movement in and of itself. So yeah, I would classify that as secular millenarianism.
I
Yeah,
think.
I
Okay,
agree.
go Ben.
Sorry.
No, you're
But
good.
like, yeah, I agree with the Eternal Jew being secular millenarian. Because when you look at the term or like the requirements for secular millenarianism, it can answer all ethical questions rationally without need for religion. I think the film does
Mhm.
a pretty good job of doing that. And then defines clearly who is evil and who is good. They
Yeah, I was
definitely
just gonna say
say
that.
they definitely say, the Jews are evil people, like they literally call them parasites. And then
Yeah, they
C,
literally describe them as evil.
yeah, and then regards religions as rivals for believers, and then holds that a utopia will come once the evildoers are dead or converted. And uh, once the Jews are eliminated, like they're gonna have that perfect race with the blonde hair, blue eyes,
Hmm.
sort of elite group of people.
Yeah. you took my answer with the evil thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, the goal of secular millenarianism is just to get rid of things and have to create the perfect millennium. Like it's about getting rid of almost like the trash, like genetics, and then making sure that everyone looks the same, acts the same, and yeah, they're almost like seen as pure, like has nothing to do with religion, but everything to do with genetics.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah. Okay, we can talk. So, any other thoughts? I mean, personally, I thought the bias in like the Eternal Jew video was like crazy. Like, I guess looking at it from our standpoint in our generation and just looking back at history, we can be the ones to be like, oh my God, that is insane. Like, why would anyone ever say that? But if I put myself in that time and place, and if I was German and I was in this society and I was getting fed this information, and like I was getting told about the Jews or just Jewish people, I couldn't blame myself for believing in it because that's just how societies work. Especially in the Japanese video, they talked about like such as things as like rape and torture. Like they're terrible, but in that time they thought it was right because the Japanese were closer to God and godlike and they were honorable.
Mm-hmm.
Like which is stuff now that today you don't agree with.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to look at it of having the perspective that we have now because when we learn in history, obviously we're learning about all of this and we're learning about like the horrors behind all of it. But at the same time, when you're experiencing that, when you were fed this day to day, it's like you didn't know anything different because the media was, the media was small. The media was what was completely in control. It wasn't the widespread
Correct.
media that we have access to today. It wasn't all the information that we have access to today. And I just thought it was like the amount of propaganda. It's ludicrous looking at it now because we wouldn't even comprehend that. Like seeing this, I'm like, if somebody showed me this in school and was like, this is true, I'd think they were crazy because I
Yeah.
I know that from where we are now. But at the same time, it's like that's all they knew. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was insane. Like just hearing them describe like Jewish people, just the way that they describe them, and the thought of actually people watching this and believing it, and going back home and saying, "Oh, this is true." Like I thought that was kind of insane. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of the word usage, like the ways that they were describing them as parasites, things like that, and like animals and the dehumanization that's just seen just in the film itself, and the fact there were probably dozens and dozens of other films just like it.
And
So,
one thing to point out with what you were saying, McKenna, is like if someone
mhm,
showed you this today, like I still think that is kind of true now with our
mhm,
world, or like previously, like the Ku Klux Klan, like
yeah,
how like there's just like a supreme white power and they believe that
mhm,
like all black people were like evil and stuff. Like, obviously people who weren't in the Ku Klux Klan obviously knew that black people weren't, bad people or anything like
mhm,
that. And another thing too with like today is with Kyle Rittenhouse, like the kid that killed two people. There's obviously different opinions about it, but like some random person hearing like, oh, a person basically got away with murder of like two people, like got a mistrial, like someone probably from another country is like, wait, what, like why? Obviously there's
mhm.
different speculations about it, there's different opinions with what happened, but like that there's just like an example of like tying into everything to like present day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
I
mean,
think
there's
a
always
lot. Oh, sorry, you go.
No, I was gonna say there's always gonna be two different perspectives in any situation, and like especially when they were talking about the Jews and just relating them to animals and stuff like that, which you brought up, McKenna. It made me think of like when people used to back in the day with segregation, they used to call black people all sorts of names, especially like gorilla or just something like terrible that people do. It's just like that was just what was told to them. Like
Yeah,
they, the propaganda of pictures next to each other and all of these posters posted everywhere. And I mean, it's just part of history, but all we can do is just try to get better.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think a lot of it is too what's in the media, obviously. Like what we're exposed to is what we're going to believe, or like not always what we're going to believe. Obviously, people question it, but at the same time, if you're exposed to it over and over again, you're going to see something and you're going to think, okay, maybe that is true if all these different media sources say this thing. But also, you have to understand that the biases, the way that people portray things, is not actually how they are or what they are. So I don't know. It's very interesting to think about that now, obviously, from a modern perspective, knowing how much media has changed over time and whatnot.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
one final thing, uh, like Andre, your comment about the segregation in one of our last texts that we read about the full women colonization. On one thing,
Yeah.
the gentleman show like the Indians like headwear or whatever, and he goes, "The Indians? Oh no, those are savages." Like another point there with that. But
It always matters too who is like who has authority of the media as well. Who is trying to persuade the people.
Hmm.
yeah. Well, are
Yeah,
there any other final thoughts from you guys?
I'm good.
No, I think I'm good too.
All right, perfect. Thanks, guys.
Okay, cool.